SPEARATICS by Sideline Sports Network. We appreciate you coming on. We're going to be talking about Florida State versus Georgia Tech. This is the pregame discussion. Um, Obviously, I'm going to talk about Miami. Um, Blowing it to Duke is absolutely hilarious. Watching Ruiz go back and forth with fans on whether there was 30, 40, 20, or 5,000 fans at the game, it would be extremely irrelevant if a almost billionaire wasn't arguing with an average Joe, which he's been known to do this. It's not like it's unknown. He does it all the time. So I still think it's hilarious that we're trying to do, or he's trying to defend how many people showed up to that game. Now, granted, I want everybody to take this for, like, this is the facts. Hard Rock holds 65,000 plus ish. So it's like 65,251, some shit like that. If there were 41,000 fans in that stadium at any point, you would not see that many bare seats. So it's absolutely false to say there was 41,000 people at that game, because there wasn't. Now he's dropped down to there was 30,000, 35,000. And then they use a picture of the actual Miami Dolphins game as the crowd picture, when that's not the game that we were talking about. We were referring to the Miami Hurricanes. I don't know if he got confused or what, but he posted the wrong picture. So, anyways, I thought it was hilarious. I think it's hilarious. I guess in a weird way, breaking like minutes before we started the show, Roderick Kearney flipped back to the Florida Gators, offensive tackle.
I will say this: he was a fan of Florida growing up. He had always been a fan of the program itself. The program itself has not really been that great. First year head coach. He even come out a couple minutes before he even committed to Florida State. Everything glitter is not gold, and he didn't really find the whole Florida recruiting situation great. It was just a weird conversation going on there. Alex Atkins has been kind of vocal. He doesn't want many offensive linemen in this class, but when you look back at it, there had to be something going on because the communication has slipped. Atkins wasn't fully pursuing him at one point. He got kind of frustrated with the whole process going on. And now you're looking at Lucas Simmons, who I think is one of the better offensive tackles in the country. I still think Kearney is very talented, but I still think he's going to be a guard at the next level. So you really look at it, I think it's a good get for Florida, but at the same time, I just don't think Alex Atkins really loved what he had in Kearney so far, and I think he kind of regretted the whole situation of Kearney committing to Florida State. While I do think he's a talented prospect, I just don't know if it kind of quite gelled the way he thought he would, and maybe DJ Sester is the option there.
Not that Roger would be scared of competition, because I know that's not it. That's what everybody goes to. That's their go-to when someone decommits and commits somewhere else. Oh, he was scared of talent. That's like the go-to for most fans. I don't think that would be the issue. I do think that Atkins has a better relationship with Simmons. I don't think that there was a whole lot of communication after the commitment from Roger to Florida State. And he was probably getting a whole lot more attention from a starving Florida team, in the position, for that matter. There's a lot of missing depth. And it seems like Florida's going to be in a weird situation next year with how many have vocally said they're going to hit the transfer portal, especially on that offensive line. Like, I've noticed 3 in the past 2 games that have said that they're going to be hitting the transfer portal at the end of the season, or already hitting the transfer portal. So, I think that it's a better option for Roger. I think him flipping's a better decision, for him. Wish him all the luck. I'm not going to say that we didn't want him. Obviously, we wanted him. We sent him a committable offer. He accepted it. But, he chose to go elsewhere. So, best of luck to him. And we'll be playing him on at least one Saturday of every year. James, obviously, we're going to be talking about, FSU versus Georgia Tech. But you're kind of my go-to for the Ruiz. It's funny. And when you start on Ruiz, it gets even better. So I'm sure you saw the tweets. I'm sure you saw what Ruiz has been trying to say. What are your thoughts on Ruiz and the Miami Hurricanes at this point?
Miami is just, again, every year they fall into the same trap. And it's this braggadociousness that they feel like they have to be this way, and you don't. Like, you literally could just be normal and just say, hey, this is the season, this is what it's going to be, and this is how it's going. But it's always got to be, we're back. If you remember in the offseason, best quarterback room, best running back room, best offensive line coach, because they got the little person that's an offensive line coach. And before anybody, I like little people, so it doesn't bother me. But I remember seeing the petite, it's not even petite because he's like an elf. But the guy picked him up, and I'm like, there's no way as a grown man anybody's picking me up and lifting me like in Dirty Dancing. Like, that's just not cool. Actually, I just realized our audience might not even, some of people might not even get that reference. But it's and forgive me, I just pattern it to, I'm coining it, it's lying ass Cubans. They just really like Cubans that are braggadocious and that they lie. They lied about Manny. They tried to make us believe Manny was a goon and this tough guy when they forgot. We know Manny. Manny was a videographer here at Florida State. We didn't, that's little Manny to us. And then we know Mario. Mario was the guy who was a trash coach at FIU that was developed in under the Willie Taggart coaching tree. Whether you want to admit it or not, that's what he is. And Ruiz coming in with everything in question. I still have no idea what Life Wallet is or what Life Wallet does, but I do know they're selling the airplane. And DJ Khaled's looking to buy it. As you saw him walk through, every TV has Life Wallet. I do know that there are issues with him being sued on certain things. I do know that there are issues with potentially not, payments not being what they were said to have been. And I do know he's been public about lessening how much money they offer from him. And it's just things that Miami fans want to fall in and believe, just like even with him just saying, yeah, and we're going to build a stadium. We're going to move a high school to go build a stadium. And me trying to explain just in a very layman's term to people, like, that's not how urban and city planning works. Like, you have to do studies, matter of fact, the community in which is my neighboring community was literally a part of a 15-year plan for the high school that was just put here. I think it's been a decade since Atlantic Coast has been open now. But I remember when I went there and the guy who was the head coach at the time said, there's going to be a neighborhood here. There's going to be a middle school right there. And I coached there. I'm like, man, yeah, right. Ain't no, they're not built. Now it's like E-Town. It's one of the most bustling, busy, growing neighborhoods in Jacksonville. I missed out on it, man. I could have got a house for $600,000. Now it's same house, $1.2 million. I ain't buying that. But it's just, imagine, and that's what he was saying. I'm just imagining Jacksonville University or the University of North Florida saying, we're going to start football. And we're going to say, forget this school that we need for people and families in the community. And we're going to put a football stadium there for a university that services 5,000 to 6,000 students a year. It doesn't work like that. So I, for one, am happy with all of it. I hope all the bad things in the world happen to them and only them, and as well as Florida. But I just think they're going to have a bigger issue on their hand as they've got players, moms arguing about Gaddis, who we all told about. Even with the staff, and I don't want to get into this too much, but if you would have told me this was 2007, this staff is fired for 2007. I don't respect anybody. I respect the hell out of Kevin Steele, but even I know Kevin Steele is no good against the spread offense. But if 2007 Kevin Steele, oh man, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a hell of a hire. But even the lies that are coming out, so now, Mario's blaming the media for expectations. Kevin is saying there's a lot of similarities between this and what he saw when Saban was rebuilding Alabama. And I'm a history major, but if I remember correctly, Saban went 7-6 and then won a national championship after that. I don't see how you win a national championship after you question your players' hearts from losing to Duke. And now the fan base is in shambles because you got people reaching and grasping for straws. And even one of my friends had to tell me I was vintage, James. Like, normally I used to troll people on Fridays because Fridays I have time. But I don't even do that anymore. And he says I went off on somebody. And I don't really remember it, but it was just, I'm just tired of them trying to now, don't try to move the goalposts and project. Y'all got beat by Duke. I've never in my life, even the best Duke team didn't beat us. And the only thing you got to say is you lost to Jacksonville State. Well, we beat y'all after we lost to Jacksonville State. And yes, we lost to Wake Forest. But the Wake Forest teams that we've lost to, one finished the season ranked 18th and won a conference championship. This one is pretty damn good this year. And the one thing I can say about Wake in the last 20 years that I cannot say about the University of Miami is that they have gone to more bowl games. They have also won a conference championship, and that has never happened. And I don't know if we'll live to see Miami winning another ACC championship.
Yeah, don't forget that Miami also lost to Middle Tennessee this year. So they want to talk about Jacksonville State. Well, Middle Tennessee is same stature, so no difference. Taylor, what we'll do is we're gonna I'll go to you a little bit about this after I make a couple of comments.
Okay.
But everybody, this podcast, SPEARATICS by Sideline Sports Network, is brought to you by Game Day Vodka. Please go check their website out. You can, as long as you're of age, which is 21 or older, you can make a purchase from their website, or you can find their product in most, if not every, Publix grocery store, and you can also find them in ABC Wine and Spirits. They're also in other local wine and spirit stores, but those are the major two that they're in. So we do appreciate Game Day Vodka for their sponsorship and supporting SPEARATICS by Sideline Sports Network, which ultimately supports Florida State, which they are also the official vodka of Florida State University. So with that being said, Florida State cannot come out in this game, regardless whether Georgia Tech's got Sims or doesn't have Sims. Regardless of either way, we can't come out in this game and just think, okay, we've got it won. This is a struggling Georgia Tech team. They are not doing good. Their coach situation is absolutely atrocious. But they have had moments this year where they've showed promise.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be one of those. We don't want to be one of those moments. We don't want to be one of the moments where Georgia Tech pulls off something. So, Taylor, I'm going to let you jump in and cover a little bit about Georgia Tech.
Let me just say this. Georgia Tech's beaten us 2 straight times. In 2020, we were 12.5-point favorites. We all saw what happened in Mike Norvell's debut. Lost by 3 in an ugly 16-13 loss. Turn around in 2015. We had the block field goal at the end of the game. It's a great day to be alive. Celebration at the end. Brutal. But Chip and Chris, I got to ask you a question. When was the last time that Florida State has beaten Georgia Tech at home?
2009?
2000.
2003, when James was playing. Yeah. Yeah. And
I was cheating because I've heard that question before.
Yeah. So just in retrospect, you can't take anything easy. This is a terrible, terrible, terrible Georgia Tech team. They had 206 total yards against Virginia. They had Virginia was literally won 0 ACC games, won 0 the year before until they played Georgia Tech that year, won 48-40 in a crazy game last year. Finally picked up their first win ever in that one, but they were 6 for 23 on third downs. They literally, their only touchdown was an interception return for a touchdown. This team is horrific. They literally do not convert third downs at all. They are 29% in third down conversion rate. And just to put that in perspective, Florida State's 47% in third down conversion rate. So, I mean, that just tells you all you need to know. You talk about Jeff Sims. He is the leader of this offense. They talk about Florida State and being a Florida State commit before, committing over to Georgia Tech later on in the process. But he gets injured in this game. He has an ankle injury. He gets out for the game, and here comes Zach Gibson. Zach Gibson completed 10 passes for 10 out of his 25 passes for 104 yards. He had a 7 QBR rating. That is terrible. And just when you think about it, I mean, Georgia Tech's averaging 16 points a game. That's one of the worst in the FBS. And, I mean, if Florida State wants to have a chance to be successful, this Georgia Tech team does not even run an efficient passing game. They're 175 passing yards a game at this point. They're 84th in defense, allowing 392 yards a game. And on top of that, I mean, you're looking at some of these guys they have, like Hall, their leading rusher. He has 377 yards. Nothing to write home about. Nate McCollum is their leading wide receiver. He's kind of a slot guy, 34 catches for 345 yards. Defensively, they have 15 sacks, nine interceptions, 8 forced fumbles. They do a good job in turning the ball over, but the problem is their leading tackle is their linebacker. He's their sack getter, 3.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. I mean, he's their do-it-all kind of guy. In the secondary, they force a lot of turnovers, but they also get beat in coverage a lot too. So when you look at defensively in the red zone, you talk about Florida State's offense in the red zone. And Georgia Tech in red zone offense is terrible. They are 130th in the FBS in red zone offense. They have 62.5 percentage in the red zone, and that is not good. When you look at just everything else that's in there, I mean, Georgia Tech is 71st in red zone defense. And when you're looking at these guys that are coming in, so you talk about a pivotal recruit like Cedric Baxter, the 4-star running back commit from Texas, you have to get him in this class. Now, I get it. Florida State probably should have scheduled that visit in December. They probably should have waited and closed it out, but I think they really want to key off this momentum. You know, he did get an unofficial visit coming from the Clemson game over to this next week. You got a guy like Hakeem Williams that's coming in and visiting this game. You also got a guy like KJ Sampson, who I think Blake Nicholson is going to be talking about a little bit later. That's going to be really key for both of those guys to come in and really be that kind of glue and kind of force him into the class at some point, because I do think that they are having a little bit of momentum. And as we talked about before, I think you cannot miss on a guy like Baxter in this situation. This is the reason why this game is a 20.5-point spread at this point. But you cannot take these games lightly, because you look at this 5-game stretch, you have to get a 3-2, 4-1 record at least to be able to generate some momentum from next season. And I mean, when you're looking at this Georgia Tech team, they don't have their head coach anymore. They're running on an interim head coach. And it's just a lot of different factors that are going in this game that Florida State best take advantage of, because this is a game, and it's a very winnable game for Florida State going forward. And they can't have it like a debut from 2020. They have to really focus in, put their foot on the gas, put their foot on their throats if they have to, and be able to finish this game on the right note.
So would you say statistically this is the worst team we'll play this year?
Yes. Well, Duquesne. Duquesne's pretty bad. But overall, even Louisiana Lafayette is better offensively and defensively than Georgia Tech at this point.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, is what Louisiana Lafayette looked like, you know, as of now. I know that
they're a below-average Sun Belt team at this point. They're pretty bad.
Well, you know, the Sun Belt has made some surprising wins this year.
Yeah.
Not necessarily them, but the Sun Belt as a whole, they've had some surprising wins. So to me, this is where my biggest question comes in. Is this the game where Norvell and staff kind of limit the playbook again, where we go back to what we did against Duquesne? Or do you leave the playbook wide open and, you know, try out everything because it's good practice for next week?
I just think you run the ball a lot. With them allowing 175 yards a game, you run the ball efficiently. If you have to run a couple of play actions here and there, okay, but you should win this game by at least 28 points, at least 4 possessions. You're looking at a game that should be won by a whole lot, and we'll kind of get in our score prediction on Thursday or later tonight, whatever the case may be. But just looking at this game overall as a whole, you cannot be able to kind of get this. Now, I understand Miami's on the docket. I get that. But at the same point, you're getting into a situation now where you have to win, and you have to get to a situation where you have to be able to develop and get some of these guys in there. You need an AJ Duffy and Tate Rodemaker and some of those guys to step in and get more reps as they go on, because this is a young team, and they really need to kind of focus in on what they got. And the takeaways are going to be the biggest thing defensively. I mean, Florida State hasn't generated a takeaway in 4 games. They need to do that in this game. This is a team that will take the ball away, and this is a team where they will kind of let you down. So you really have to factor in that. They're offensively, they're going to be able to create a little bit of turnovers there. So that Georgia Tech offense is pretty brutal.
So, Chip, in your mind, should this be a by second half Jordan Travis and other starters being pulled out of the game? Is that what we're looking at? We want that, or do you see Jordan Travis playing in the third and fourth quarter?
Well, in a perfect world, that's exactly what you want. Jordan Travis and all them to hang half 100 and be out by halftime. But going back what Taylor said, they need to get back to what works for them. They need to run the ball, establish the run, and then throw off the run. Jordan's got to get whatever's going on with him. He's got to just hopefully he's honed in this week and he's worked on it, but they have to get back to what works for them. They have to get back to the fundamentals of what exactly works. That's something we hadn't seen in the last 3 weeks. They've had spurts where they've done really good, and then they've had long stretches where it's been back to reminding you of Jeff Bowden calling plays.
James?
I was going to ask this to everybody on this part. With Trayshawn Ward, he's been unavailable the last couple of weeks because of the injury. You talk about running the football efficiently against a team that you should beat by a lot, and that's kind of the game plan in this game. Do you give him a sizable amount, or do you kind of just walk him back into the game if he's available to play? Or what's kind of the scenario going into the next week against Miami? Do you even put him in a situation where he's having 10, 15 carries a game, or do you just kind of slow play this and maybe wait till Miami?
We'll let James answer that first.
I think you got just to give him some reps. Like, I mean, don't put the bulk of this on them. You got 3-headed monster here. So I would let Trey Benson be the guy that you're getting it. See what you can get with Lawrence Toafili, and continue to try to just let him get back in game shape. That's about all that I would do. Same thing with Fabian Lovett. No need to get guys hurt for no reason, but at the same time, you should be able to treat this like a higher end version of a practice.
Here's my outlook on it. I personally wouldn't bring, if Trayshawn is available, maybe give him 5 or 6 snaps in the entire game. And that's my personal opinion. Reason being is there's no reason to irritate an old injury, a new old injury. If he's over it, great. But there's no reason, even though Georgia Tech is a bad team, Georgia Tech's not great, doesn't mean you can't get hurt. Hell, you can hurt yourself. So no reason to risk that. And I really want to see. I want to see. We've said this each week. Micah Pittman, Johnny Wilson, Jordan Travis, whomever having their coming out party. I want Florida State as a whole to have their coming out party against Miami at Doak South. That's what I want. I want to go beat Georgia Tech like it's the easiest thing we've ever done, but I want Florida State as a team. Whether it be, I want all cylinders clicking against a team that really needs to, they never will, but they need to humble themselves. We need to give them a big, fat ass humble pie and smack them in the face with it. Because there are some, believe it or not, there are some Miami fans out there that are very rational. I listened to a space earlier today. Like Uncle Lou, for instance, that man probably knows, he's probably forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, but he's a very rational. He understands the game better than most. He's also still a high school coach. Very rational. The people that get on there with him, he rationalizes them. I'll just say this. He's the savior to bringing the Miami fans back down to earth, because he really hones in on getting these people back to reality. Because with the beginning of the season, they're going to go 12-0. Then they lose one game, they're going to be 11-1. Then 10-2. Then it's just on down the line. So it's just like right now. There's a bunch of fans that state, well, they've lost 4 games. They're going to go 8-4. They're not going to lose another game. They're putting unrealistic expectations on Cuban Jesus and his staff. And like James said, go back to 2007. If this is the staff you had, okay, now you're working with something. I don't see this crazy amount of, like, I don't personally think that this is the staff that's going to bring Miami back to dominance. To be completely honest with you, I don't know that Miami ever gets back to dominance. And, I was asked this question today because I stated that I didn't believe that Miami would ever be back to dominance again, where they have a dynasty. Will Florida State ever get back to being dominant? Will we ever have a dynasty again? Will there be a replacement to Alabama or even now the Georgia? And now you see what Tennessee's doing. Will Florida State ever be back in the realm of dominance? Because we did do well under the Jimbo Fisher era. I'm not going to take anything away from that era, but we were never just dominant for 8-9 years straight, like we're with Coach Bowden, 36 consecutive bowls, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't even get that with Jimbo. So football has obviously changed. It's obviously, with the transfer portal, the NIL situation, kids being different than they were previous. The brand holds weight, but it's not the weight that it used to hold. That's not just Florida State. That's every brand. Because, guys, 2 years ago, Tennessee was an absolute dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. And, Pruitt got in trouble, lost his job because of dropping McDonald bags. But this coaching staff at Tennessee can't take all the credit for their success because they didn't build this team. A lot of McDonald bags built this team. Now, no one's going to tell me that they found every McDonald's bag that was ever dropped to these kids because that's BS if they say they did. So you've got a bunch of kids that are on this team that Pruitt and et cetera went out and got and put together. And we all, knowing what we know about Coach Norvell and the staff, we're not the McDonald bag dropping university. We're not going to do that. Like, under the coaching staff, they're not. Mike Norvell is not going to drop money bags for nobody. Their pitch is, if you come here, it's going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done in your life. Like, they're not. I don't necessarily agree with that pitch, but that is one of their pitches. They tell these kids, if you come here, this is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. So get ready to work. I respect it, but it's not necessarily the route that I would be pitching due to the fact that now if we get 8-9 wins this year, run with that pitch. That's fine. But off of 3 wins the first season, 5 the next, that's not necessarily the pitch that I want to hear from a team that's not winning consistently. So my question to all of y'all is, and we'll start with Taylor, and then we'll go down to James and then Chip. But will Florida State, with this staff, or we'll just say head coach because the staff will change more than likely, will this coaching error ever bring back dominance for Florida State in your opinion?
What do you classify as dominance?
10 win seasons.
Okay. I can see them being consistently a 10-win program to a point because I always tell people, everybody clamors for championships. Everybody clamors for this and that. It's hard to win championships. Bobby only won 2, so there's a situation there where you have to understand and kind of step back. You can't be a Miami fan in this situation, go broke or go home type of situation. As Miami's learning right now, as Chris talked about before, it's a rebuild at this point. Miami is 3-4. They have games against Florida State, Clemson, Pittsburgh still left on their schedule. So they could easily be 5-7. And next thing you know, they're having to battle back in that jump. And I think when you're looking around college football, you're seeing the Miamis of the world, you're seeing the Clemsons, you're seeing all these other teams, and you're seeing even in Alabama that's not letting up so far the past couple of years that they've had Nick Saban at the helm. You look at that, you just want to see consistency. You want to see Orange Bowls. You want to see, just a little bit more participation out of this program because it hasn't been there. Will he get there? I think he gets there to the 9 or 10, but I just don't know if he meets that threshold of getting past 9 or 10 to getting to that championship. That's left to be seen. And I just hope that Florida State can get to that level, but I just don't know if they will.
I think it all depends upon admin. You brought up a great point there, Chris, when you talked about Tennessee's change. It didn't just come from one coach. What it came from was being competent administration already behind the powerhouse of most SEC programs have this. Florida State is trying to make these moves, but there are still some things that they still got to get out of their own way. I hate to say it this way, and this is no disrespect to meant for anybody, because I love all no's, but it's kind of like medical marijuana. Like, we knew it was going to get legalized. We just needed some people to die. Like, because the people who wanted it to not be needed to move out, needed to move on to pastures. And I think if you had a new wave of young leadership that came in that was energetic, like I think Seminole Boosters with Stephen Ponder, a guy named Kyle. Well, forgive me, Kyle's got one of them interesting last names, but he's got a lot of energy to be able to go. And then with the NIL stuff, some of the people behind that, you need some people who understand the lingo and how the players communicate and talk and what kids actually like. And all those are the vehicles to be able to back and push the current coaching staff and what they're able to do. I think the energy and the vision that Mike Norvell has is enough. But if the administration is still getting in its own way over simple things, I think you'll always have that. And when I look back on Bobby's the beautiful thing of Bobby is Bobby had consistency in athletic directors when they were going through their dynasty time. You had Bob Goin, who was there from 90 to 94. Then Dave Hart picked up from 94 until 2007. And then even then when they got out, I think Spetman came in, and then you had I can't think of the guy. Really, where the turmoil came is when Jimbo got into it with his athletic director, and that's really where a lot of the things come in. But when you're trying to build something, you need this. And when you think about Florida State over the past 5-6 years, we became aware that we were behind in the facilities race. We did not know what we did not know, but everybody has a football-only facility. To this day, I think we're one of 5, maybe 6 in the Power 5 conferences that don't have it. I'm talking about not just the top guys. I'm talking about we're in the bottom tier of facilities because of that. This was promised when Tag became the head coach. Wins and losses should not. The minute we know we're going in the right directions, and when wins and losses don't dictate when we're going to do things the proper way. We should have the football-only facility should be breaking ground similar to what Florida did. But now you're going to do it, and because of construction things and because of the way it's where you want to put it, we're not going to see this thing for 3 years at the earliest. So we're, again, constantly getting in the way of each other. And the problem is you got to do massive fundraising, because by the time that's built, you need to be doing blueprints and mock-ups of the next one, or of the new indoor, or of this. Like, because when you think about, because what you are competing with is the Georgias, the Alabamas. Right now, Saban dreams something, it's somebody's job to build it. Georgia's on indoor practice facility number 2 and building a new football only. And those things don't have anything to do with wins or losses. But I always bring it down to this. To become a collegiate athlete, you're one of the 2% of the population. Think about it like this. If you're one of the top 2% of all dentists, that means you're a multimillionaire. That means all you need is 4 walls and a roof to live. That doesn't mean you want to live in a shack if you can afford to live in a mansion. So, yes, that should not be the end-all, be-all. But as a player, if I can afford to pick my place, I want to pick luxury. So those are the things that we have to do. But I think also a consistent admin is what's helped Alabama with Saban. It's when you know that we're moving in the direction in which you want, it's easier to recruit. It's easier to like, and I think what's happening, like, he wanted to hire some off-field. Norvell got a revamped off-field roster. They want to do some more things. I think we're moving in the right direction. It's just consistency and people seeing the vision and not letting what the product on the field stop them from doing their jobs. Whether Mike's here next year or he's here for another 10 years, the goal is to win, is to build championship infrastructure to where when somebody hops behind the wheel, all it is just driving a very, very fast car.
Chip, what are your thoughts?
Well, to add on to what James says, I believe it takes a strong administration to back the team, athletics, period. It takes a healthy fan base, because you can have the greatest coach in the world, but if he can't get the players that he needs for there to be a strong team, then you're just spinning your wheels with a 7-8 win team. Do I think Norvell can win consistently 9, 10, 11 games? Yes, I do. But it takes, like James said, a strong administration, a supportive administration, that no matter what your record is, say you're only an 8-win team, that they're still giving you what you need. And the fan base, we have a, at times, very toxic fan base. And these athletes see the stuff that's posted. They hear the things that are said. And a lot of kids don't want to, they're not built the way that James was when he was coming in, the way I was, where we let a lot of stuff just roll off our back. A lot of them feel like they need, quiet, safe rooms and everything. And you have to praise everything they do. And, life's not like that, but that's, what we're dealt with.
Well, here's my outlook on this. A lot of people that are coming in to be in the fan base, whether you were a fan back in 1968 or you became a fan in 1993. Here's what I've been telling people, because I understand that Coach Bowden built one hell of a foundation and one hell of a brick stadium. I understand that. There's a reason that the name of the field is Bobby Bowden's Field. That's all understood. But if Coach Bowden started coaching in 1976 at Florida State as a head coach, this fan base, maybe not the ones that are here now, but at the beginning, we allowed 17 years before we won our first national championship, BCS-wise. 17 years is how long it took. Then it took him another 6 to win his next one. Then it took Jimbo 5 to win his first one. But the fan base expectations is that Norvell should win a national title next year. I'm saying this because of what has been posted for the previous week. Us being on a bye week allows me to sit back and scan multiple pages, multiple fans stating what they expect from this university as a football program, what they expect from the baseball program. We just hired a new baseball head coach in Link who used to play here. Now, I don't know what the expectations are in baseball, and I'm not going to say that I don't care, because I do, but I haven't paid attention to those fans because it's not baseball season yet. The fans that I paid attention to this entire week were the football fans stating that if Norvell is not in the college football playoffs next year, we should be getting ready to move on to another coach. When I saw these things, the exact face that James has got down in the bottom right corner, I must say had to be mine, because I was more confused than I had ever been. The reason that I say this is because and I asked the fan that put this up there, and I will not name them because I felt like I was able to educate a little bit. But I asked them, when did you become a fan of Florida State, the football program itself? 1994, the year after we won our first national title. So the 17 years of hard work to get to that first national title, you were not a fan. No, I didn't even watch football at that time. Okay, so did you realize that it took Coach Bowden 17 years, the great Coach Bowden, 17 years to win a BCS national championship? No, I didn't. Did you realize that after he won the first one, 6 years later, he won another one? Well, yeah, I mean, I knew it was 6 years in between, but it was only 5 for me because I started rooting for him in '94. Okay. Do you realize that was the only 2 that he won? Well, yeah, I mean, we got 3 total, right? We have a fan base that consider themselves to be diehard fans. But I asked a couple of these fans that were saying that Coach Norvell should win a national title, or by minimum, at bare minimum, be in the playoffs next year, or we got to can him. I asked them, when was the last time that Florida State was in the playoffs? And or how many championships, BCS national championships, does Florida State have? Now, I gave these people, we're typing back and forth. I can't see them. For someone to come back to me and say, I don't know, 7 or 8, and you consider yourself a diehard fan, and you think we have 7 or 8 BCS national championships, it's hilarious that you post that Coach Norvell should be in the playoffs at bare minimum next year. Here's the thing that kills me. This particular fan has about a 14,000 following. There's 14,000 people that follow what he says. But he can't tell you accurately how many national titles we have, how many years it took Coach Bowden to win one. Probably can't tell you whose nickname is P-Dub. Stuff to that nature he does not know. But these people run with it. They see what's said. So where Chip had said we have a toxic fan base at times, we also have toxic media. We also have toxic so-to-be, wannabe fans. They're not just necessarily actual fans. Because media replied with, there was a story that came out that was deleted. This was an entire article that was wrote over this week. It was released on Wednesday at about noon. By 12:30, it was completely deleted and taken away. Not going to state who this was, but I will state that they listed 4 head coaches that they wanted to see us go after. If one, they lose their job, regardless if Norvell wins or not, they want us to go after these 4 coaches. One is Dan Mullen, which completely blew my mind. The second one, now this is coming from a credible media group. I am not going to hash out who they were because they did delete it and I did not get screenshots, which I'm upset with myself over. I've reached out to a few people to see if they had. No one's told me they have it. But I read this entire story. And Manny Diaz's name came up. I really don't know what this particular person was doing when they wrote this story, if it was a joke and they meant it to be a joke. But by reading at the end of the story stating, I know that these names are going to make everyone scratch their head. And yes, I'm being serious. I think these 4 coaches would suit Florida State better than who we have now. I know multiple people saw this story. I know I'm not the only one that read this because I had people come to me and say, did you read what this person said? I told you last year we should have went after whomever. I don't understand where that comes from. I don't understand the thought process. I don't understand how you rationalize or fathom wanting a Dan Mullen or a Manny Diaz or a Brian Kelly or at least Dion makes some sense. At least it's somewhat sensible. I'm not saying that it makes a whole lot of sense, but I'm saying at least it makes some. Because Dion was one of the names. Chip Kelly was one of the names. Manny Diaz and Dan Mullen. Those were the 4 coaches that they stated, or he stated, would suit Florida State better than Mike Norvell. I'm very surprised that all 3 of you aren't laughing because I thought it was downright freaking hilarious when I read it. And once we're off air, I will let y'all know who wrote this. But regardless, just know that they're credible. And it to me was unreal expectations to say if Norvell does not end up in the playoffs next year, that we should go after X, Y, or Z and coaches. do we have a real expectation for this team that makes sense next year? Let's fast forward and say we're an 8-4 team this year. What are the realistic expectations for this team next year, win-loss wise? And each one of y'all can give me your win-losses. Like, we want to continue to progress, but what realistically next year makes sense for us to win, for Norvell and staff to be around and it still be fathomed that this is the right direction? Taylor, you can start.
I think it all depends on who you keep for from this season's team to next season's team. I mean, if you lose a Jordan Travis, you're losing Dylan Gibbons, you're losing Jazz Turntine, you're losing Demetri Emmanuel. I mean, you're losing pivotal pieces on your offense. I mean, God forbid Johnny Wilson goes to the NFL. You got Jared Verse, a projected first-round pick. You got Fabian Lovett. You got Robert Cooper. I mean, you got Tatum Bethune and Kalen DeLoach that are potentially going to be NFL guys. I mean, you got a lot of guys there. Jamie Robinson, another guy. Akeem Dent. I mean, the list goes on and on. And if you're not able to keep a lot of those guys in the fold, and James talked about it in a previous episode, that is one of biggest Mike Norvell's biggest challenges going into this upcoming season. It's not about getting Cedric Baxter. It's not about getting, Hakeem Williams in the class. It is literally about keeping most of the team that you have here on the squad. Because, I mean, when you look at it, that roster is bare bones when you get into it, and you don't have a lot of guys. I'm not saying those guys are bad, because they could be really good, but they haven't developed quite yet, and they still need a season to kind of go through some processes. So it's just a very up-in-the-air situation. I can't just say, well, we finished 8-4 this year, and we need to go 9-3 next year. Well, if the reasonable expectations and the roster has it that you're not a 9-3 football team, you're not going to win 9 games. So
I like the answer.
I guess, yeah, it all depends on who comes back. But I'm looking at the schedule right now. It's basically this year's schedule. The only school that is, you don't play NC State, but you trade that out with Pitt at Pitt, and they'll always be a tough team. And you've got Clemson, and I really believe that we're not as far away from Clemson as what people think. I think better quarterback play and better coaching would have made that Clemson game. But here's where you do have it, and we'll know this really, really soon. But Syracuse is going to have a lot of their team returning next year. So whether you beat Syracuse this year or not, there are a lot of sophomores and juniors on that team that's feeling very confident right now and playing for their coach. And it's kind of one of those weird things. It's kind of how the ACC has always been. Dino Babers should have been fired forever ago, but then they catch lightning in the bottle. He'll get an extension, and then he'll suck again. Same thing with Wake Forest, which he's got it going. He's got his system going now, but they're going to all their doctors and their doctorate degrees and their lawyers will be gone by next year. And you pick up a Duke, you pick up Virginia Tech, who's reeling. You pick up you got North Alabama, Southern Miss. And then you obviously have LSU, but LSU won't have Jaden Daniels, which I do believe another a true traditional Brian Kelly type quarterback presents another set of obstacles. But let's be real. It was those last 5 minutes is what really got Florida State in trouble against LSU. So I would say if everybody comes back, 9-3, I think what you have, and you talked about building it. And I'm sorry, I don't want to get long with it, but you're talking about what it takes to build a program and what it takes to get things done. It isn't like this unless you had a truly good recruiting class. Say what you want about Jeremy Pruitt. Jeremy Pruitt can recruit his ass off. Say what you want to say about USC in the past. USC has always been USC. They've always had great recruiting classes. Add Lincoln Riley to it. That's why you're able to get that. Oregon has been rocking with good recruiting classes for a while. You add recruiters and coaches to it. I agree with you. I think Miami and Florida, if they don't let these coaches coach the length of their contract, the next coaches could be the guys that take them to another level if it is that. But I think what Florida State has to do is, again, get that top 15 recruiting class, win in the transfer portal one more year, and then really light the 24 class on fire. Because the 23 class you got right now, have guys that are going to come in and play. Your 24 class, you've got to continue to have guys that are going to come in and play. And then that 25 class could be where you potentially get it. Using Jimbo as the example, he was able to take over recruiting Bobby's last year. And then he was basically structured it to where he knew 2012, 2013 was going to be where he was going to be able to have something special. So that's really what you got to look at it as. If you want sustained growth, you've got to look at it from that perspective, unless you're Nick Saban. But even then, Alabama was so desperate that basically Nick Saban set the precedent for what college needs to do now. He took an NFL coaching staff and modeled it in college. So for every coach has shadow staff. Nobody was doing that before Saban got there. But Alabama had one coach, the coach before that got popped in a strip club, then had to go somewhere else. Then somebody else think about where Alabama would be if Rich Rodriguez didn't turn them down to go to Michigan. Michigan was a better job at the time than what they thought Alabama was going to be. Alabama was in a situation where they were desperate to have to be better. Again, I think we have the tools. I just think I hate that it looks better because it's not tangible, but I also think that we have to give it its time. Take it on the season. If we finish 7, if we finish with 8 wins, you're trending now in the right direction. And I think that's where what recruits are seeing and what people are seeing is just not looking like Florida and Miami right now.
Chip,
I see us 9-3, possibly 10-3 with a bowl win, 9-4 with a bowl win. As long as there's steadily improvement, and you can, from Norvell's first year till now, you see mass improvement, but you also see the growing pains of a young coaching staff. You have, a lot of the times where Norvell should trust his players and trust his team. He's not. He's wanting to, at times it feels like he still thinks this is Memphis when he can get away with some of the things that he could there, and not kicking field goals or, going 4-on-4. I just think this coaching staff needs to grow with the team every year. And like Taylor said, it all depends on who we have coming back to set expectations for next year. Are we going to be a veteran team that's loaded with, fifth-year seniors? And Jordan Travis's case, I think he'd be a 6-year senior. But it all depends. As long as Norvell keeps hitting on the transfer portal and on his recruiting classes, I think Florida State can become a 10-win powerhouse a year.
Well, the best part of it is that we are still in the ACC. You are going to have people like Syracuse that's going to have probably 65 or 70%, returning back. That's going to be still a very decent team next year. But like James said before, you got Wake Forest is finally losing all their doctrines. They're finally, this is their last year finally. Their 8-year and 35-year-old students are finally leaving. I mean, they got a team full of Chris Winkies. It's quite ridiculous, to be honest. And then we're not having to play NC State, but you're having to replace that with a good Pitt team. So it's not like your schedule weakens, really. It's pretty equal to what we've got now. The question is, how much development indifferent are we going to have out of the 2022 class? How many of these guys are going to be able to step up next year and be a full-time or a possible starter? Do you get a starter out of a Daniel Lyons? Do you get a starter out of a Sam McCall and Azariah Thomas? It just depends. Like, if those things happen and you do keep, we'll just say 60% of the guys that we're wanting to keep, maybe you keep a Jordan Travis, but you're definitely losing a Robert Scott, in my opinion. I think Robert Scott, being as high up on there as he is, I mean, he could obviously stay, but I don't see people turning that money down if they, are projected to go in the first round. Jared Verse being hurt this year, I think it would be smart for him to stay and get more film because he could easily fall out of that first round. Will he? I don't know. But I personally think that when we started this show a few short months back with all of us, James had started on that conversation back when we first were starting together. Is it's about who we can get to stay for next year. So I hope Norvell's pitch and that this staff's pitch is flawless. I hope that we're able to return the Jordan Travis. I hope we're able to return the Jared Verse, or I mean, even I think Derek McClendon will be eligible to go into the NFL draft. Not saying that he should, but he would be eligible to. You're definitely going to lose Jamie Robinson. He's gone. Like, the kid's going to be picked up. There's no reason for him to stay, other than if he wants to grow a little bit more. But I don't see that happening. So you're going to definitely lose guys. That's just going to happen. But it's about who Norvell can replace. It's a lot easier to replace 5 or 6 guys than it is 12 and 14. So if we lose 6, 7 that are starters, the transfer portal, Norvell's done a really good job in the transfer portal, in my opinion. This previous year with the wide receivers, guys, we might be a 2-win team at this point if it wasn't for some of the wide receivers we pulled onto this team, in my opinion. Because wide receiver play last year compared to this year is just – we had one bad game where we had 6 drops. Yeah, that was terrible. But, I want everybody to remember the previous year when we had no receivers, that felt like. I mean, we haven't even seen Helton this year at all. Hadn't seen him. We just seen Douglas for the first time this last against Clemson. I was glad to see him. More of a running back, halfback type. But regardless, that was your wide receivers last year. You didn't have the Johnny Wilsons. And I didn't even like Taylor bringing up us losing Johnny next year. That's like blasphemy. Don't say those words. But I think coaching-wise, I think that Chip said it best, that we have I don't want to say that they're young in age, but young in Power 5 coaching. This is their first rodeo when it comes to Power 5, in my opinion. To this extent, this intensity, you didn't get this at Memphis. You didn't get this at Arizona State or at Charlotte. This is a different bull within itself. So I think that this team matures next year, regardless of who comes back. But most importantly, the coaching staff matures. We have guys that are more set up not to make the mistakes that they've made these 2 and 3 previous years. So, Atkins came out, and I'm going to touch on this for just 1 second. But Atkins came out today and spoke about the rumors about going to Charlotte. Did anybody watch that interview? Taylor, if you watched it, speak on a little bit what he said if you can remember it. Is there anything to be worried about as of right now?
No, there's not. I don't think you need to make a lateral move with that. So
I completely agree. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss something that was said. Everybody, we're going to be back Thursday. We are potentially having on it's more probable than not. On Thursday night, it's a current recruit for the 2023 class. I'm not going to 100% say that he's going to be here until he gives me he's 100% going to be here. He's gave me the 90% sure he's going to be here. So right now I'm going to leave it at that. Y'all come back and join us on Thursday. We are going to hold a Twitter space, not tomorrow, but the next day. So any of y'all that can be on there, that'll be great. Got a couple people wanting to ask questions. Got a couple fans that want to come up. Twitter space is the best way to do so. I do appreciate James, Chip, Taylor. I appreciate y'all coming on. We're down to our last 14 seconds.